guys, it's Kelly. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm coming at you with 3 hybrid sunscreen recommendations. Now, hybrid sunscreen refers to a sunscreen that uses both chemical and mineral filters together in one gorgeous sunscreen. And I really think that this is kind of the best of both worlds, because not only does using chemical filters with mineral filters cut down on white cast. Yeah, you're definitely not going to get that pasty white chalky kind of look that you get with pure physical sunscreens, right? But when you put mineral filters with chemical filters, it just overall helps the stability and the coverage of the sunscreen. So like I said, it's really harnessing the power of both into one formula. So today I'm going to talk about some recommendations from CanMake as well as from Shiseido. So if you guys are so ready, give the video a big thumbs up and let's get started. So first up, I want to talk about the CanMake Mermaid Skin Gel UV. Now there's 2 different versions of this sunscreen, and I'm actually going to be talking about both, but I want to start with the #1 version first. This is also referred to as clear. So this sunscreen is rated SPF 50 plus PA plus 4, and it uses a mixture of 5 different filters. So the chemical filters are Uvinyl A+, Oxytinoate, and Tinosorb S. And on the mineral side, we have zinc and titanium dioxide. Now this is using, on the chemical side, it is using new generation filters and old generation filters. So as the name suggests, new generation chemical filters have been developed a little bit more recently, and they are more modern, and they really do improve on the old generation filters, which in this case is oxytinoate. So the Uvinyl A+ and the Tinosorb S have been formulated to be a lot more photostable than older generation filters, and most notably newer generation filters really do cut down on the irritation of chemical filters, because as you may have heard, this is kind of an outdated sort of argument now that we're dealing with newer filters on the market, but you may have heard that physical or mineral sunscreens are better for sensitive skin than chemical sunscreens. And that is because some of the older generation chemical sunscreen filters do irritate sensitive skin, but the newer filters are just a lot less likely to do that. They're a lot more skin friendly. And of course, I wouldn't be recommending this sunscreen if I personally had experienced irritation on my sensitive skin. Everybody is different, but I do find the mixture of the new and old on the chemical side of this sunscreen to be really interesting. It's kind of like they are lifting each other up. Now, some of you may know CanMake is a Japanese cosmetics company, a lot better known for making makeup products than they are for making skincare. And in fact, I don't know that they make any skincare besides their sunscreens. And because they are a cosmetics company, you know, they have really marketed this sunscreen as not only your sun protection, but also as a skin perfecting makeup base. And that's really evident in the texture of this sunscreen, because it's a very watery gel type of texture. It's got really great spreadability. It actually feels kind of hydrating as you're working this into your skin, and it absorbs and dries down really quickly into a very lightweight, very breathable layer on the skin. And that actually makes it a pretty good makeup base, actually, because it does absorb and dry down very quickly, which means you don't have to wait around. If you do like to wear makeup on top of your sunscreen, you don't have to wait for that sunscreen to dry down with fears that you're going to interrupt the continuous film on your skin, right? You definitely don't want to apply makeup on like damp sunscreen at all. So I really like the dry time of this, and I think that this functions nicely as a makeup base, because the effect of this is that it's going to give you a really pretty glass skin, dewy skin look. Now, for some people, it's going to be glass skin. For other people, it's going to be shiny, greasy skin, right? It really just depends on your preferences, but it does have quite a high shine sort of finish. You can't gloss over it. It is going to have like a shiny look. I think it's great underneath makeup. Even without it, I don't mind a little gloss, right? A little shininess on my skin, but it could be a major drawback for some people. The one thing I do want to say about that lightweight feel and this texture, you just want to really make sure that you're applying enough, because as much as I love the lightweight feel of this, this is definitely a type of sunscreen you could under apply and not get the right amount of coverage, because it is so thin and it spreads so easily across the face. You could really think that you covered your whole face with a really small amount. So just make sure that you're getting enough. You know, one of the favorite ways to just kind of like eyeball enough sunscreen for both your face and neck is to use the Fitty Snails 3-finger method. So I didn't come up with this. I'm crediting Fitty Snails for this, but what she does is she does the index, middle, and ring finger, and she puts a line of sunscreen on each of those fingers, and that's going to be more than adequate for your face and your neck, and probably a little bit on your chest too. But that's a really good way to ensure that you're getting enough sunscreen on your face to get the labeled protection. And I really do term this as an everyday sunscreen. I think it is important to have a sunscreen wardrobe, a variety of sunscreens that you can choose from based on your lifestyle, but also the certain activities you're going to be doing that day. And the everyday category, in my opinion, is just like when you're maybe running outside for 20 minutes with your dog, or you are commuting and you get like hot, intense sun in your car as you're commuting to work, or you're in and out of the car or the outside or whatever, you know, running errands or something. That's what I mean by everyday sunscreen. This is an excellent everyday sunscreen. The pros to this sunscreen: it has absolutely no white cast. It is called clear for a reason. This is also very comfortable on the skin. As I mentioned, there is an older generation chemical filter in here. There's always the potential that it can irritate sensitive skin. I'm happy to report I felt no irritations with this. And I also am happy to report that this is not a sunscreen that feels drying on the skin, because, you know, chemical filters have their drawbacks, but so do mineral filters. And I'm personally quite sensitive to mineral filters really aggravating my dehydration and really making my skin feel very dry and tight by the end of the day. And actually found this very comfortable and not drying at all, which is a major plus. It's always a fear of mine when it comes to mineral filters. Another pro to this is it's really easy to reapply. As I've, you know, really highlighted, this is a very lightweight sunscreen, so it feels great to reapply, but it also doesn't pill on reapplication either. But what I really love about this sunscreen is it's actually, for being a Japanese sunscreen, it's actually free of alcohol, which is really hard to find in Japanese sunscreens. Alcohol has a great purpose in sunscreens. It can really help with the dry time and the absorption of sunscreen. I just personally, with my sensitive skin, I can't tolerate it like at all. It's not great for my skin. So I always have to find alcohol-free sunscreens. And it is actually quite rare, you know, to find that in Japanese sunscreens. This does not contain any drying alcohols. It also does not contain any artificial fragrances or essential oils. So there are a few drawbacks or a few cons to this sunscreen. And definitely one of them is the fact that it is not waterproof or even sweat resistant. I can't emphasize that enough. This is an everyday sunscreen. I will also tell you that as much as I think the glass skin finish of this can be a pro, for a lot of people it's going to be a con. So definitely just be aware of the finish of this sunscreen. And I think a drawback to the sunscreen is the size, because it's so tiny. It's only 40 grams of sunscreen. The prices really vary depending on where you get this from. It can be fairly affordable and it can be a little bit pricey for a small size. It's still a reasonable sunscreen, retailing anywhere between $6 all the way up to, I think I paid around $12 for this tube. So it really does, you know, depend on where you're getting it from. But even so, for a small size, going through sunscreens really quickly, it can definitely add up over time. Next up is also from CanMake. It's their Mermaid Skin Gel UV, but this is the number 2 version, also known as white. So this sunscreen is rated SPF 50 plus PA+4, and it does actually use the same 5 UV filters as the clear version. However, it is really important to note that the concentrations of those filters are a little bit different based on the order of the ingredients list. You'll notice that the titanium dioxide is in a different place, a little bit higher up on the list than the clear version. Now, as I mentioned before, mineral sunscreens do get a bad rep for creating quite a white cast on the skin. And particularly titanium dioxide can be very responsible for that because it's actually a white pigment. Yeah, it is the component in white paint. And if you're into any type of like painting at all, you know that there is a variety of white that's called titanium white, right? So that's where a heavy white cast can definitely come in with mineral sunscreens. And it is important to note there's a little bit more of titanium dioxide in the white version. And it really is called white for a reason because yeah, there's a white cast to this. So the texture of this is very creamy, very lightweight, quick to spread and absorb, and it's got great dry time. Very similar performance in the texture as the clear version. But you will notice this does have a minimal but noticeable white cast on my skin. So if you're kind of like medium skin tone, tanned skin tone, you're gonna get that kind of paled out, or I guess a nicer way to say it is a tone up effect, right? But it can kind of wash you out and it can be kind of noticeable. Remember that CanMake is kind of a cosmetics company first, and they are marketing this as well as a makeup base. I think it actually looks beautiful under makeup because there's almost what looks like a washed out effect if you don't wear any makeup with it at all, actually turns into a really beautiful pearly effect underneath makeup. So there's some ways to work with this or make it work for you, right? But if you're like my skin tone or darker, you're gonna notice this effect. Could be good, could be bad, but it definitely does still have that kind of shiny, but with the white cast, it almost looks a little bit more pearly kind of finish to the skin. So yeah, it definitely does have a noticeable finish. So some pros of this sunscreen, as I said, the texture is really great and it can perform really nicely underneath makeup, kind of giving a nice sort of pearly effect to the skin. I think this is really easy to reapply without any thick feeling or pilling on the skin, but be aware as you reapply a product like this, the white cast will kind of start to become more enhanced, if you will, because you're adding more to your skin. So you might start to get whiter as you go, which could be potentially a drawback, but no pilling on reapplication, which is a plus. Now, as I mentioned, my skin can be very sensitive to zinc and titanium in sunscreens. It can really dry out my skin. I am really happy to report, even though we have more titanium dioxide in this sunscreen, I did not get any dehydration, tightness, dryness in my skin at all. This is incredibly comfortable to wear every single day. So I definitely found that to be a major plus. And again, just like the clear version, no drying alcohols, fragrances, or essential oils. Now, some drawbacks to this sunscreen, it's just not gonna work for every skin tone. And that's why I'm glad that they actually have two versions to pick from, because if you are not digging white casts or even tone up effects, right, then the clear version is gonna be a great choice for you. But it is something to consider that white cast can be a drawback. As much as this looks great underneath makeup, as much as it's comfortable on my skin, I don't reach for this every day because it has the white cast and it builds up around dark hair and on my hairline and my eyebrows and things like that. So I think that that is a big drawback to consider. And of course, this is not something for active or sweaty days at all. This is, again, a very solid, everyday type of sunscreen. And just like the clear version, tiny, right? Same size, 40 grams, about $6 to $12. It can start to get pricey, can really add up as you keep re-upping on such a small sunscreen. Next is the Shiseido Anessa Perfect UV Mild Milk. This is SPF 50 plus, PA++. So this uses 5 different UV filters. We've got zinc and titanium dioxide, Uvinyl T150, Uvinyl A+, as well as Tinosorb S. So there's a couple of things to note here. The zinc and titanium, the mineral UV filters, are much higher on the list. The concentration is much more. So an interesting way to think about it, if you will, is the Shiseido Anessa sunscreen is a little bit more mineral sunscreen than chemical sunscreen, even though it's a hybrid, right? A little bit more on the mineral side, where the can make sunscreens were a little bit more on the chemical side. So that's a good way to kind of make a distinction between the two. It's also important to note that the 3 chemical filters being used here are all new generation filters. Now, Anessa is a very popular sunscreen line in Japan, and there's a lot of different varieties of Anessa out there. There is kind of like a gold bottle version and then the pink bottled version here. They also have versions that offer SPF 35 protection. So you want to be careful when you're shopping around for the Anessa. It is important to note that the mild milk version, the kind of like peachy pink bottle, this is formulated for sensitive skin. It omits any drying alcohols, fragrances, and essential oils. Now this is called a milk, and that is really referring to the texture of the sunscreen because it is quite runny and milky. You will feel like a little moisturizing slip to this. This spreads across the skin with that kind of liquidy texture really beautifully, and it's got incredibly good dry and absorb time. This is really important to talk about when it comes to sunscreens because, you know, there is a wide variety of textures in the sunscreen world, but one of the most important factors to sunscreen is how quickly it can absorb and dry on your skin, because that's really going to be relational to the protective film it is creating on your skin, because sunscreen is all about creating a continuous film that is protecting you from the sun. But if you have something that is not absorbing into the skin quickly, there is a potential that, you know, a spot could rub. You know, maybe you put your shirt on over your head after you apply your sunscreen and you rub on your cheek, and then that continuous film, if it hasn't absorbed and dried into your skin properly, could get disrupted, right? Or if you're somebody who likes to put makeup over sunscreen, if you start to put that on over sunscreen that hasn't quite absorbed or dried down, you could be disrupting the continuous protection on your skin. And so dry and absorb times are extremely important when it comes to picking a sunscreen, because nobody want to wait around 20 minutes for their sunscreen to dry. You know what I mean? Like, you can't do anything but just wait for it to dry. As you might have suspected, with the titanium and the zinc in much higher concentrations in this sunscreen, this will leave a minimal white cast. Minimal, but detectable. You know, I'm kind of like borderline between I can get away with a white cast and not everyone's going to notice it, and it's pretty noticeable on my skin, right? All that being said, this is nowhere near the type of white cast that you're going to get with a pure 100% mineral filtered sunscreen. So you can kind of split the difference a little bit, right? Get the benefits of mineral sunscreen without all that white cast. This is a sunscreen that's a little bit more sweat resistant. It's not exactly waterproof, but it is something that's going to stick around and have a little bit more longevity on your skin, even in like hot and humid kind of a climate, than the can make sunscreens do. Because you know what I said about can make, it's very lightweight. It's not at all sweat resistant. You want to make sure you're really applying enough. This kind of solves some of those issues that I had with the can make. This really stays put. And in fact, you do want to make sure that you have a really good cleansing process in place at the end of the day, because you're going to want to make sure you remove all this. It's not hard to remove, but you want to keep your eye on that for sure. So here's some pros about the Shiseido Anessa sunscreen. It's really light on the skin. Even though it is creamy, it is a liquid cream that spreads into a thinner, lighter weight layer on the skin, and it just doesn't feel heavy and oppressive. It's still very breathable. Very easy to reapply. You're not going to get any weird like greasiness or like pilling or thickness on the skin, but it is always important to remember, as you reapply sunscreens with high amounts of zinc and titanium dioxide, you intensify and build upon the white cast. So just keep that in mind. As I mentioned, it's got a really great sweat resistant kind of finish. This is going to stay put on your skin. We're not exactly waterproof here. This isn't like your swimming maybe sunscreen, but this is definitely going to hold up to hotter, sweatier, moister sweat resistant. And this is non-irritating. This just feels very comfortable for sensitive skin. And again, we don't have any of those common triggers like drying alcohol, fragrances, and essential oils. This really has been formulated for sensitive skin. So here's some potential cons or drawbacks to the Anessa sunscreen. As much as this does not irritate my skin, and I think that's in huge part to the fact that they only use new generation chemical filters and not old generation chemical filters. It's a big plus for sensitive skin, right? Even though it doesn't irritate it, it can actually aggravate dehydration if you're prone to dehydration. I am. As I mentioned a few times, I'm sensitive to zinc and titanium dioxide, really kind of making my skin feel dry and tight at the end of the day after wearing that type of sunscreen. This is not the worst one by any means. It's more of a whisper of dehydration, a whisper of dryness, but I gotta mention it because it's noticeable and it is there. And because of that fact in my personal skin, this is not my everyday sunscreen choice for me personally. This is part of my sunscreen wardrobe. I personally have this around and pick this up when I need a sunscreen that is gonna stay put and grip my skin. Remember, sweat resistant. If you're not prone to dehydration, you're absolutely fine. And in fact, if you're a little bit more on the oily side, it is important to understand that zinc and titanium dioxide have some oil controlling properties, some oil absorbing properties to it. So this could actually give you a really nice mattifying effect and actually kind of cut down on shininess as well. So could be a pro, could be a con, but I definitely got to bring it up. Of course, another drawback, white cast. We all know that. We spent some time on it, but it definitely makes the list. But for me personally, the biggest drawback of this sunscreen is the price. Holy moly, this is so freaking expensive. So this can retail, it's a really big variety of prices here, anywhere from $28 to $40. I think I paid for this one on YesStyle last summer $32, I think, which is more than I care to spend, especially on like a tiny sunscreen like this. This is 60 milliliter of product. Yeah, it's really pricey. So quickly, I just want to mention that Shiseido has reformulated the Anessa milks, so the mild milk as well as some of the other ones for 2021. Super exciting, but I can't really tell you too much about that because it's actually not out yet. It should be out by the end of February. Just in a few weeks, it should be out. What I do know about the new one is the filters are the same. So pretty much everything we've talked about with this sunscreen should still stand for the 2021 formulation. But what I have read is that they have really worked to improve the silkiness of the sunscreen as well as to help cut down on the white cast. And quickly, before you go, this has nothing to do with sunscreens. It's totally off topic, but exciting. I am running a giveaway with Isntree where you can enter to win some of my favorite products from the brand that you see right here. So there are two different ways to enter. You can enter right here on my YouTube channel and hang tight. I'm going to tell you how to do that in just a second. Or you can follow the link in the info box and you can enter over on my Instagram page as well. You'll find the instructions on the post for the Isntree giveaway. So if you want to enter here on YouTube, what you need to do is make sure you're subscribed to my channel and that you've thumbs up this video. And right here in the comment box of this video, I want you to let me know what sunscreen are you currently using right now. The giveaway is going to be open right now today until February 24th. That's Wednesday. I've got all the info, by the way, in the info box below for you guys. And I'm going to announce the winner in next Thursday's video on February 25th. There will be 2 winners from YouTube and 3 winners on Instagram. And feel free to enter in both places if you want to. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video and I can't wait to see you in the next one. I hope that you are healthy, happy, and safe, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.